What's up, guys? Hopefully all of you are doing well. Today we're going to be making a real home-cooked comfort food dish that is definitely fall appropriate, and that's my smothered pork chops. Let's get into the recipe. So for this recipe, we're going to need about 4 to 6 really beautiful pork chops. I have 5 actually that are bone-in, and then I have 2 that are boneless because I already had them on hand, and I decided to use them for this recipe. Now for my seasonings, I have a good mixture of garlic, sage, and paprika, and some other spices. Be sure and check out gdseasoning.com for the exact measurements to this recipe. What I did was I took about 2 teaspoons of the seasoning and added it to the flour and mixed that in. And then I also saved about a teaspoon for the gravy later. And then you can use the rest to season both sides of your pork chops. Next, I'm just going to go ahead and dredge the pork chops right into the flour, just like that. It's really easy. And you're going to tap off the excess flour. While the pork chops were being dredged in the flour, I went ahead and preheated some vegetable oil in a large skillet over medium-high heat, about a ½ inch deep. And I just proceeded to fry the pork chops on each side just until they were nice and brown. But at this point, we don't need to cook the pork chops all the way through because we're still going to smother them. For those of you who are trying to avoid frying, all you have to do is take the pork chops and sear them on each side for about 3 to 5 minutes in minimal oil. I got this question on my smothered chicken video and I didn't show you, but I wanted to take the opportunity to show you how to do that. It only takes a few minutes, sear them on both sides, and we're still going to proceed with the gravy. For the gravy, I'm going to be using red onions. Yeah, I know they're red. We're going to use them anyway. Bell pepper and celery and some garlic. And I'm just going to saute those up and about a 1/4 cup of the oil that we fried the pork chops in. Once the vegetables get nice and soft after sauteing them for about 3 to 5 minutes, I went ahead and added my garlic. And I'm just going to saute that up for about 30 seconds after it's added. Followed by the flour. We're just going to move that around in there and stir it until it's nice and light brown. I have a confession to make. This was not a dish that I grew up eating in our house on a regular basis. And I think it was because my dad hates, until this very day, a fried piece of meat being smothered and cooked in gravy. And it was just like, ugh, if you want to make him mad, that'll do it. So now I'm just going to add my chicken stock, and this is a full-on salted chicken stock, by the way. That's why you won't see me add any more salt from this point on. I may add some other spices or seasoning, but the written recipe will say to use a low-sodium chicken stock, and that's just so you can control the salt that goes in the dish. I knew what I was working with, and I made sure I didn't add any more sodium. It was done. So our gravy comes up to a complete boil, and you're looking at the thickness. Once a gravy comes up to a complete boil, you are now aware of how thick it's going to be. All I wanted to do is add some red pepper flakes for a little spiciness, and I added a little bit of dried thyme. Stirred that in, gravy was done. Now some of you may be wondering, how can you use your crock pot for this? I used the crock pot method for the smothered chicken video, and it's the same thing. You would make your gravy and pour the gravy and the chicken into the crock pot and let it cook for a couple of hours. I'll link that video down below so you can give it a look. Finally, all I have to do is take my 7 pork chops, and I ended up having to shingle them into the gravy. That way they would all fit comfortably. And then I covered them and I baked them at 375 degrees for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. At that point, they got incredibly tender. Once they were done, all you have to do is uncover them, serve them over some rice or some mashed potatoes, all that delicious savory gravy. And the pork chops were really, really tender. As you can see, even the boneless pork chops were nice and tender. And actually, I think I preferred those over the other ones, but that's just personal preference. You can always give them a try and try that method of doing a flourless version of a smothered pork chop. Now all you have to do is serve those good old smothered pork chops right over your favorite starch like rice or mashed potatoes. Pour your little extra gravy over, and please make a vegetable. Did I mention that? Make a vegetable with this. Just don't be eating the starch and meat, okay? And I'm just going to freshen it up with a little fresh parsley, and we're going to dig in. Thank you guys so much for coming and cooking with me and hanging out. You know I appreciate it. Don't forget, this recipe and others can be found at gdseasoning.com. And I'll see you guys next time.